I left School of Theology, where I received my Master's of Divinity degree. One of our professors, Dr. Vincent Harding, used to ask us to introduce ourselves by giving our name and the name of our mother's mother. And each year when the classes began, that is how he would have us all introduce ourselves for every class. And he explained that it was a reminder for us that we come from something, and we are a part of something larger than ourselves. We do not exist in a vacuum. We are all, every one of us, part of a lineage, part of a heritage. And it was especially poignant as he reminded us that many of his ancestors did not know who their mothers were, let alone their mother's mother. Because as slaves, many people were not afforded the luxury and the knowledge to know their lineages or even their mothers. And so Dr. Harding asked us at the beginning of each new class cycle to take that moment to think about, where do we come from? How often do we do that these days? I don't know if I cry, but I do. So, my mother's name was Mildred. And I think I'm crying because my mom is here, so anyways, she does the same thing. But I realized as I was writing this, I don't know who her mother's mother was. And I'm glad that she's here today. And we can have that conversation this afternoon after the service. Because if we don't know our heritage, if we don't know where we've come from, can we really know where we're going? And I think that question is more poignant today when we look at what is happening in the Middle East. The history is long, and it is deep, and it is wounded. And the wounding is continuing. And so having a historical context for the ongoing violence is helpful. But at some point, we get to the place where it no longer matters. And we have to choose who we are going to be moving forward. Because holding on to the hate of the past leaves a lot of people wounded and dead. And in my life, I'm very optimistic. I tend to want to focus more on the here and now. And I like to think I am guiding my metaphorical raft with the intention and awareness of where I am going. But when I was writing the introductory for this newsletter this month, I realized that if I don't know where I've been, how can I possibly know where I am or where I am going? And so this month, I think the month of Heritage is a good reminder to take some time for us to look at our past. What is our heritage? Where do we come from? And how does that guide where we're going? When we look at our past, it allows us to be in the present. But we don't want to live in the past. And, you know, one thing that I think we don't always think about, and I've mentioned it a few times, but is we think about whether or not we're living in the past, but we don't always think about whether or not we're living in the future. And a lot of times, we're also living in the future without realizing that we're living in the future. And I think sometimes that's where our fears and our anxieties come from, because we're living in a future and we're not totally in the present moment. And so I think it's important for us to realize that the line is long. We have our past, we have our present, we have our future, and it all works together. But where we are is the eternal moment of now. And so we can look through our past lens and looking at it with regret and despair. Are there things we did wrong? Probably. Are there things we could have handled better? Without a doubt. Are there areas where we caused harm to other people? I'm sure there are, for every one of us, because we are all human and none of us have it all figured out, and especially we didn't have it figured out 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. I remember when I was in my 20s, I decided that I wanted to pack up and move to Florida for a year, and I guess it would have been my post-college gap year, if you want to call it that. And I remember as I was getting ready to go, confidently, and I was in my early 20s at this point, confidently telling one of my friend's moms that I was going to live my life with no regrets. And she looked at me without taking a pause and said, "It's impossible to live your life with no regrets." And I have to admit, I was quite taken aback and somewhat offended at that. And then, in my 20-year-old wisdom, I thought to myself, I did think this, well, of course you would say that because look at some of the decisions you've made. Of course you have regrets. I didn't say that, but I was definitely thinking that. And now, 30 years later, I finally understand what she was saying. If we're going to engage in this thing called life and jump in with both feet, we're going to make mistakes. We are meant to make mistakes. And sometimes those mistakes very well may impact the people we love in damaging or negative ways. Sometimes people do this intentionally, but my guess is that the vast majority of us do not ever cause harm intentionally. The harm that we cause sometimes is started out with very good intentions at the forefront. And we're not perfect and we do things wrong and we hurt other people occasionally along the way. And that is okay because that is life. But here is the key. It can't end there. If we have made mistakes or have regrets, that's fine. That's part of being human. The key is then to take the time to move forward through it and acknowledge our mistakes and make it right if we can. The other side of that doesn't work is constantly reliving what we did wrong and beating ourselves up for it. That doesn't work either. And we can't just diminish it and tell ourselves or the other people, well, I said I'm sorry, it's time for you to get over it. I see that happen too. Well, I said I'm sorry, why are you still mad at me? Well, maybe because the other person still feels hurt and we haven't quite moved past the hurt and the damage caused. So it's about finding that balance between understanding we're not perfect, but also being willing to also say, but I'm also going to hold myself accountable. There is there's a big continuum in between beating ourselves up and not taking any accountability. And it's that middle point where we say, yep, I'm human, I'm not perfect, I've made mistakes, I've caused harm. I'm going to acknowledge that, I'm going to move through that, I'm going to make it right to the extent that I can. And I'm going to let it go because I'm not going to continue punishing myself over and over and over again for something in the past that I did imperfectly. It's finding that balance. And so if you are anywhere on this continuum today with, I caused harm over here and I'm beating myself up and I can't let it go, give yourself a little bit of self-love, a little bit of forgiveness. If you're over here and thinking, well, I've made mistakes, but I'm just going to rise above it in the spirit of love, and the people around me, it's their problem that they can't get over it. I'm sorry, but that's not healthy either, right? We need to find that balance of, I'm going to hold myself accountable. I'm going to hold myself in love. And so I guess that would be accountable love. And then I'm going to be present with the people around me. And I wonder, as we turn on the news and we see the pain and we see the bombs and we see the blood that is happening again and again and again. I don't know. Like I said earlier, I don't have any wisdom for what should be happening in the Middle East. I don't have any words for the pain. I guess maybe what we do is, for those of us who can, we're here, we're comfortable, we're safe. Maybe we hold the love and the light in the way that we can, and we send that out so that people can receive it in the way that they're able to receive it. And I think maybe what I was thinking about this morning is that peace starts at home, it starts in the human heart. So maybe what we do today is we do that for ourselves. And so this closing hymn that we're doing, it was interesting when I was talking with Joanna this week about the music. Next week we're going to be talking about beauty and self-love. And I told Joanna, I said, I really want to do How Could Anyone closing today for Heritage. And she said, well, would that work better next week for beauty? And yes, but for some reason I needed it to be the closing hymn today. And I didn't realize why until this morning. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to sing this song. The words are, how could anyone ever tell you you are anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could any something?
Fail to notice.
How could anyone fail to notice
that your loving is a miracle?
That your loving is a miracle.
How deeply you're connected to my soul.
How deeply you're connected to my soul. So what we're going to do, we're going to sing those lyrics 3 times. We're going to sing them for those of us who have been harmed in our lives. And as we're listening to that, if you have been harmed, I ask you to hear those beautiful words going into your heart, knowing that you are beautiful. And then we're going to add some more voices. We're going to sing it again. And we're going to take that in for those of us who have caused harm. And if you feel like you have caused harm in your life and you just can't let it go, you're having a hard time with some self-forgiveness, I ask you to open your heart, take it in, and understand that you are beautiful. Regardless of what your past was like, you are beautiful. And then we're going to sing it a third time, and we are going to send that love out to the world, to whoever is hurting, to whoever is scared, to whoever is grieving, as we recognize that we are truly interconnected. So the way that this is going to work is the women in the choir, the higher voices, are going to sing it once. We're going to just take it in. And then we're going to add the layer of the deeper voices. We're going to take it in, and then the whole congregation is going to sing it together for the third time. Okay?
Let's remain seated.
Joanna says, let's remain seated for this. So. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.